Hi there, and welcome to Power Play. I'm Vashi Capellos. Tonight, unimaginable loss in British Columbia.
The nation mourns with you. Canada stands by you.
Can't even imagine the phone calls that parents might have received. I can't imagine the heartache and hell that they're living through.
Canadians are grieving tonight after a mass shooting at a British Columbia school left a teacher and 5 students dead, more than 24 others injured. We're live in Tumbler Ridge for the latest on the investigation, and we're going to speak with politicians representing the area about supports in place for the community. A community facing an inconceivable level of grief this evening. We're going to start this evening with that developing news out of British Columbia. Let's take a look at some images here from the town of Tumbler Ridge, where yesterday 8 people were murdered, at least 25 others injured in the worst school shooting at a Canadian school in 40 years. Here is what we know so far. Tumbler Ridge is a small town in the foothills of the Rockies in northeastern BC, near the Alberta border. At about 1:20 p.m. local time yesterday, an active shooter alert was issued. A female teacher, 3 female students, and 2 male students were all murdered in the shooting. Another 2 people, the shooter's mother and a sibling, were found dead in a nearby residence, bringing the total killed to 8 people. BC RCMP provided an update on the victims this afternoon.
For the deceased victims, the school included a 39-year-old female educator, 3 12-year-old female students, 2 male students ages 12 and 13, and then the 2 additional victims were a 39-year-old female and an 11-year-old male that were located deceased at the local residence.
It is believed the victims of that residence and the suspect are family members. The female adult victim is the mother of the suspect, and the youth male is the brother of the suspect, or stepbrother.
The RCMP also outlined a timeline of what happened. Here's what Deputy Commissioner Dwayne McDonald said.
At approximately 1:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at Tumbler Ridge, RCMP received a report of an active shooter at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. A police-initiated public alert, PIPA, was issued as officers responded. Police from Tumbler Ridge RCMP and surrounding detachments responded immediately, with members from the local detachment arriving within 2 minutes of the initial call. Upon arrival, there was active gunfire, and as officers approached the school, rounds were fired in their direction. Officers entered the school to locate the threat. Within minutes, an individual confirmed to be the shooter was located deceased with what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. We did not receive a call to attend the home until approximately 2:47 p.m. or 1:47 p.m. Pacific time. We were called because a neighbor, there was a young female at that home that went to the neighbors, and that's how we learned that there were 2 deceased at that residence.
We are also learning more about the shooter. Police have identified that shooter as 18-year-old Jesse Van Rootselaar. RCMP say Van Rootselaar dropped out of school 4 years ago and was not currently attending the school. Here's what we know.
So a suspect is identified as an 18-year-old female by the name of Jesse. We have a history of police attendance at the family residence. Some of those calls were related to mental health issues. Police have attended that residence in the past, approximately a couple of years ago, where firearms were seized under the criminal code. I can say that at a later point in time, the lawful owner of those firearms petitioned for those firearms to be returned, and they were.
Were criminal charges laid in relation to those firearms?
No. We identified the suspect as they chose to be identified in public and in social media. I can say that Jesse was born as a biological male who approximately, the information that I have, approximately 6 years ago began to transition to female and identified as female both socially and publicly.
Andrew Johnson is live for us right now in Tumbler Ridge. Hi, Andrew. Thanks so much for joining us this evening, this afternoon, where you are. Tell us a little bit about Tumbler Ridge.
Well, Tumbler Ridge was a quiet, safe place to live. It was actually created in the early 1980s to support the coal mining industry. People are very tight-knit, as you might expect. There's a lot of outdoor recreation here. It's a beautiful place and somewhat in the middle of nowhere, for lack of a better word. 7-hour drive from Edmonton, 13 hours from Vancouver. And now this. We actually just heard an eerie sound a moment ago, the school bell sounding to end what would be the school day at the secondary school behind me, where police are very active in the parking lot in their protective gear, gathering evidence. There is a growing memorial behind us here. There are flowers. People are stopping by households affected by this tragedy with flowers, with food. We've spoken to one family of a victim, a 12-year-old girl, Kylie Smith, who were absolutely distraught, as you might imagine. They waited for hours yesterday to receive word about what had happened to their daughter. Their son was safe. They didn't know what had happened to their daughter, and finally got word late into the evening that she didn't make it. Everyone here is connected. Everyone knows one another. The mayor said these aren't his residents. These are his family. This is one big family, and they've been hit so hard for this in the most unexpected of places. And of course, this is hitting people right across the country. One of the worst mass shootings now in Canadian history, Vashi.
Yeah, it feels almost impossible to take. We just heard from the RCMP a pretty substantive update in terms this afternoon of, where the investigation has landed, the shooter. They still haven't identified a motive, though, at this point, correct?
They still have not identified a motive, and of course with the shooter dead, that is going to be difficult. They're going to conduct a lot of interviews. We've spoken to experts who said RCMP may bring in someone called get an expert to perform what's called a psychological autopsy, trying to piece together the mindset of someone who is capable of this, who would want to do this and carry this out here and destroy so many people in this town and cut so many lives short. That investigation, of course, is really just beginning, just as the grief here is still so fresh for people who have lost loved ones just in the past few hours. And now, of course, they'll be turning to things like planning celebrations of life, planning funerals for 12 and 13-year-olds. And we've spoken to a pastor who said there is support coming in on that count from across the country, people offering assistance in planning, financial support. So much here is just beginning in its early stages, and everything is at its most raw. The father I just spoke to said he cannot believe this is happening, that it's reality, and it is, and it hasn't sunken in yet.
I admire their ability to even be able to have a conversation with you about it. I can't imagine how they had the composure to even put together a sentence given what they've endured.
I thought they were incredibly brave, and that's what I told them. And they said they were doing it for their daughter. They, of course, didn't want to step out of their home and talk to a stranger with the media who's flown in from a city hours away at the worst time of their lives. And they kept repeating to themselves, we're doing this for Kylie. We're doing this for Kylie. We want people to know about her. We want people to know about these victims. We want people to stop talking about the shooter. We want people online to stop talking about the shooter being transgender. That ideology and those politics, that's what they had been seeing when they were checking out what's happening online, and said it disgusted them, and they wanted to bring the focus on the victims and on the people of Tumbler Ridge. And that's why they spoke out to the media, and they were very brave to do so.
What did they tell you about their daughter?
They said she was thriving in high school. She was 3 months away from her 13th birthday. She loved the arts. She was planning to go to school in Toronto, and they said Kylie had never hurt anyone. She is the last person who deserved something like this. And they said they know all of the people who were killed. They know all of those kids. The father of Kylie, Lance, coached many of them at soccer. As I said, all of these people are connected, and they could never have imagined they'd find themselves in this situation, speaking to the media about their 12-year-old daughter who is no longer with us and what her life aspirations had been, while they clutched a photo of her to their chest. And like you mentioned, it's surprising they were even able to speak and say that much, but they were doing it purely out of love for a lost loved one, as they try to make sense of this, as 2,400 people here also try to make sense of it at the same time.
Well, thanks for helping us pay tribute to their daughter, Andrew. I appreciate it very much.
Take care.
Thank you. That's Andrew. Thank you, you too. Andrew Johnson, live for us in Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia. The tragedy that took place there yesterday prompted politicians today, and politics rather, to take a back seat here on Parliament Hill and elsewhere across the country. Politicians, in fact, of every political stripe offered their condolences. Take a listen.
This morning, parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers in Tumbler Ridge will wake up without someone they love. The nation mourns with you. Canada stands by you.
The fact that this took place at a secondary school, it makes it even more tragic. As a father, I can't even imagine the phone calls that parents might have received. I can't imagine the heartache and hell that they're living through.
It makes us think about our kids' safety when they're going to school. We take it for granted. You go to school, you come home safe. And events like this give us pause.
Bob Zimmer is the Member of Parliament for Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies, a riding which includes Tumbler Ridge. Hi, Mr. Zimmer. Good to see you. Not really good, but thank you for making the time. I certainly wish it were under different circumstances.
Yeah, I appreciate the time, Bastion.
I know that you're headed back to your riding right now. Take us through, if you could, what it was like to get the notification last night that this was going on in your own backyard.
Yeah, well, the first the incident reports was there was a shooting at the school, and of course you hope optimistically that it doesn't pan out, or it was more of just a threat and not a real situation. And sadly, the situation deteriorated quite a bit, and we heard reports that kept escalating until finally it was 10. I guess it's 9 today, victims as a result of this shooting. And it's just devastating for the community, devastating for Tumbler Ridge, and really for Canadians.
What do we need to know about this community? What can you tell us for those who are watching who have never been there?
Well, it's this beautiful little community that I worked there as a kid. It was a coal town, so it was really built out of the wilderness into this almost Disneyland-looking community, and it's lasted through downturns in the economy, but it's really resilient, and many just good folks out there, hardworking people that made it home. And the reason why they live there is because you're right in the middle of the Rockies. It's beautiful in the winter and the summer, and it's and equally so, the people are just beautiful themselves. I've gotten to know so many over the years, and just can't imagine what those families are dealing with today. Being a dad of 4 kids myself, I just, these parents sent their kids off to go to school, expecting them to walk through the door in the afternoon, and they just didn't come home. And I will say, though, I especially appreciate the prayers and the thoughts for many across Canada. We appreciate them. There's still kids that are fighting for their lives in the hospital as we speak. So I just would ask and covet those prayers and ask that they would continue for these victims and for the community.
Yeah, I don't think there's a parent among us who has a really, it just almost feels impossible to think about being in the shoes of the parents that you describe.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's just tough to even imagine, right? And but they're living it out in Tumbler, and I guess what's surreal for them yesterday afternoon is becoming very real, very weighty, and their lives are so affected by this situation. It's real. Again, some kids aren't coming home. Some kids are going to come home injured, and regardless of who it is in the community, they're dealing with this trauma that they didn't ever expect to have. So I would just ask again that Canadians across the country, we appreciate reaching out at this time. So many have reached out to me as a surrogate for the community, and we so appreciate your thoughts and prayers for Tumbler today.
Like I said, you're headed back. What kind of conversations have you had about the supports that might be available for people in case there are people out there who are watching, or what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so many have offered just with trauma, and I'm not sure. I'll know more when I get on the ground out in Tumbler and to see what's already there and what's been already set up. I know from from leaders, from Pierre Poilievre called me last night, Gary Sangari, offering whatever could be done for the community, they would do it. So the offers have been there. I think we need to get on the ground to see what's still needed there in response to this tragedy.
And as you, I'm sure, have been in touch with people from the community, like what is your takeaway from those conversations right now?
Yeah. Well, again, it's just more shock, and then again the reality is hitting today. And I see a mother she's some have probably been following her on Facebook. She's down in Vancouver. Her daughter has a wound to her head, and she's fighting for her life as we speak. So you're dealing with this real time, and I guess if I would just ask Canadians across the country right now, is just mourn with Tumbler Ridge right now, and just keep those prayers up for those people that need them. And there's going to be a healing long term that's going to, we need to support them in their healing as well. But for now, we mourn with them, and just keep sending in those kind comments because they're appreciated.
I'm sure your calls for prayers are being heeded. Thank you so much, Mr. Zimmer.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you making the time, and safe travels.
Thanks, Basham.
Bob Zimmer is the federal member of parliament for the riding that covers the community of Tumbler Ridge. Larry Neufeld is the provincial MLA for Peace River South in British Columbia. He's in Tumbler Ridge. Hi, Mr. Neufeld. Thank you so much for making time for this. I really appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
You've been there now, as you told me just before we went to air, since daybreak. Can you tell us a little bit about your conversations there on the ground?
Yes. I actually am back in the hotel at the moment, and the last conversation that I had forced me to retreat to the hotel to recover. It's devastation is not the correct word for what has happened to this community. There are not words strong enough in the English language to convey properly what has happened to this community.
How are you doing?
It's not about me. I'm here to represent the people. I'm irrelevant. This is about the victims. This is about the victims' families, and this is about the community.
Tell us a little bit about the community for people who are watching right now, who only know what they hear about the few people who attended this school, for example, or the 2,400 people who live there. Like, what should we know?
This is a stunning jewel of a community. It's nestled in the mountains, wooded mountains. There are world-class, deeply incised rivers. There's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is a jewel of a community. And part of a very large part of what makes this such a jewel are the people.
I live in a rural area. It's not as sort of remote as where you are right now, but I know the degree to which everyone where I live basically knows each other. Not to sound trite, but that is the case. And I can only imagine how pronounced the impact of something like this would be when you know the victims, when you know people who were in the school. Like, is that the experience that you're having there? Is that the experience of people in that community right now?
Absolutely correct. If you have not been directly affected, there's less than a 1 degree separation from that direct effect. You are affected.
And what kind of an impact are you seeing that have? How do you think it will inform kind of the enormous challenge of dealing with this moving forward?
It's very difficult to say at this point. What I experienced is not what I expected first thing this morning. Numbness. It's simply, that's the only way I can describe it. Numbness. And I don't know how I describe myself at this point. Numb.
What kinds of things are there if the numbness does subside and turn into something maybe even worse, like for people who need support, what can you tell us about that?
I am very impressed. Yes, I am a politician, but what I will state is that politics is not welcome here today, nor is it welcome here this week or in the coming weeks. What I would say very clearly and very adamantly is that I am very impressed with the initial response of the RCMP, very impressed with the response of the medical services. And to this point, I've been very impressed with the responsiveness of the provincial government, of which I'm the opposition.
Are you having conversations? Are they involving you in the decisions they're making? Like I spoke to Bob Zimmer, for example, at the federal level, who is talking to the public safety minister, who of course is also from a different party. Everyone seems to have arrived at the consensus that this is the furthest thing from political as it should be.
Absolutely. There is no politics welcomed here, and I won't participate in that, even though that's my profession at this point. This is about the victims' families, and the community.
And will you be staying in the community for a while? Like, are you there for a bit?
Yes, I am.
I've
rented a hotel room, and I will be staying here for at least the next week.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you making the time for this. I know that you have a lot of things to do, and I really do sincerely appreciate it, Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Larry Neufeld is the provincial MLA for the region of British Columbia that covers Tumbler Ridge. We're going to take a quick break, but we have a lot more coverage of the mass shooting in British Columbia coming up. Before we head to that break, I'm going to show you happening here in Ottawa, flags at half-mast today. Federal buildings here in the nation's capital and across this country are lowered for the next 7 days. We'll be back.
Our congregation, again, is difficult to explain, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. We're so grateful that so many of our kids got out of there alive, but yet so heartbroken that some of them didn't make it. And we're thinking of the 25 who were injured as well. And families are just mourning in their own way. Everybody has their own way of expressing remorse and grief, and we give them their comfort zone.
Tumbler Ridge Fellowship Baptist Church Pastor George Rowe there speaking to CTV News this afternoon following the mass shooting at a community school. A teacher and 5 students were murdered. At least 25 others, as you heard the pastor reference, were injured. With me now to talk a little bit more about how the province is dealing with this is former British Columbia Premier Christy Clark. Hi, Christy. Wish I were seeing you under different circumstances. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
As you saw news of this surface, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Pardon me.
No, I was just going to say it's a terrible reason for something for us to have to talk about on television, but it's a terrible thing that's happened. It's a black day for British Columbia and for Canada. Tumbler Ridge is a very small town, 2,500 people. It's had its ups and downs over the years. It was a planned community, so the provincial government kind of got it going in the early 80s because it's a coal mining town. And over that period of time, it's had its ups and downs. It's because coal prices have gone up and down. And there was one period where they lost half their population, and they've grown again. And it's one of those towns that's typical, very small, resource-based town. They are resilient people. It is very hard, though, to imagine, no matter how resilient the town may be, how people are coping up in Tumbler Ridge today. This is just an absolutely terrible moment for our whole country today.
Yeah, it feels like a level of resilience that is almost like impossible to meet. Particularly, as one of the parents, or if your kid was in that school and, quote unquote, lucky enough to survive, like that's just a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, Vashi, we all send our kids to school every day, and we always believe in our bedrock that our kids are going to come home safe every day. And I think in a small town like Tumbler Ridge, where literally everybody knows everybody else, and many of the families are intermarried, and it's a very young community by BC standards. I think about 20% of the population is under 18, which is, for us here, quite young. It's just an unthinkable outcome. And a lot of people move to towns like Tumbler Ridge because they know it's going to be safe, that their kids can walk home, bike home from school, and, you know, spend summers at the lake or in the mountains and come home safe every night. And my heart just goes out to everybody in that community who's dealing with that today, because not only, you know, for all those people who haven't lost somebody, they know someone who has, and it fundamentally must shake their belief in everything that they've come to believe is good about the world today.
Well, I was just also thinking, given like how the size of the community, the way in which you describe it, and everyone else we've interviewed, for example, who's from that community, like how you just know everybody there. It's not as though this would feel distant in any way. How much, you know, anything like this would be incredibly difficult to confront, but the permanence almost of what this does to that community, it feels overwhelming too.
Yeah, because those children are lost forever. And the ones who were in the school are traumatized for decades afterwards. All of those families will be living with a sense for a while of insecurity. But the thing is, I do know about, this small town and small towns like it across BC and across the country, is that people learn to look after each other. And they really know how to lean on one another. And so it's very hard to think about what comes next right now, but I'm hopeful and confident that there are people up there who've been through a lot. Life's been hard. Life hasn't always been easy, and nobody up there expects the world to just always be easy. And so I think that resilience will serve people well over the longer term, and I hope people find a way to heal from this. Can I just take a minute to CIBC has set up an emergency relief fund, and I really want to encourage everyone in the country to maybe make a donation to that. I think they donated $100,000 to get it started, and it's a great way to support people up there in that community without a whole lot of without the money going to pay the fundraisers for it. CIBC will be donating all that money to the people in the community, and it's a small thing to do, but I think for people up there it will mean a lot.
I appreciate you making mention of that. Just before I let you go, I did want to ask, I have interviewed two different politicians in the past half hour, both of whom said that the government at the federal level and the provincial level are, working very well with them, that, the comments made on Parliament Hill today were incredibly genuine from every politician and political leader who spoke. What does that tell you?
I think that we're all human beings. We disagree with each other, and we fight about stuff, and we have different ideas about where the country should go. But I think all of us know what it is to love your family, and we all know what it is to send your kids to school and believe they'll come home safe. And we all know that we're still people, and we all want everybody in this country to be able to feel like they can go to bed safe, and that they'll wake up and their lives will continue uninterrupted, and their families will continue to live long lives. I think we all want that for each other. And when you see what happened in the House of Commons and in parliaments across the country today, I think we all are reminded of our own humanity. And, in this era where we're exposed to so much anger all the time, maybe these terrible moments of sadness can at least remind us what we share in common.
I'll leave it on that note. Thanks, Christy. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Christy Clark is the former Premier of British Columbia. Our coverage of what has unfolded in Tumbler Ridge continues after a quick commercial break. BC's Deputy Premier, Nikki Sharma, is my next guest.
To those families who have lost loved ones, this House mourns with you. To those who are recovering from injuries, this House prays for you. To the students, the teachers, the parents, every resident of Tumbler Ridge, all of Canada stands with you. May the memories of those lost be a blessing.
I can only imagine the phone call or visit that brought the news, the panic, the helplessness, the heartache that followed. No parent should ever have to fear that their child will not return home from school. No parent should ever bury their own child.
Welcome back to Power Play. We're continuing our coverage tonight of what's developing out of British Columbia, one of the deadliest mass shootings in our country's history. Police have identified the shooter as 18-year-old Jesse Van Rootselaar. Police say Van Rootselaar was known to them, with officers responding to his home, or rather the shooter's home, for mental health-related calls in the past. Van Rootselaar shot and killed 5 students at a secondary school in Tumbler Ridge who were 12 and 13 years old. The shooter also murdered a teacher at the school. 2 other victims, Van Rootselaar's mom and a sibling, were found dead in a nearby residence. Van Rootselaar died from what police characterize as a self-inflicted wound. Nikki Sharma is the Deputy Premier of British Columbia, and she is with us live right now. Hi, Deputy Premier. Thank you so much for making the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
How is your government navigating this situation at this moment?
Yeah, it's been a really difficult 24 hours here in BC, but mostly for those families that are impacted with the tragic losses that they're suffering in such a senseless way. We've been mobilizing on the ground to try to get the level of supports that are needed to people. I'm just so grateful for the first responders that showed up and continue to show up in that community. The Premier and our Public Safety Minister are en route right now to be on the ground in Tumbler Ridge. And we'll continue to be there with people as we grieve, as we figure out how to make sense of this senseless loss of life. And we stand with those families that have suffered such a tragic loss.
Yeah, it feels certainly impossible right now to make sense of all that we've seen unfold and then all that we've heard about it in the interim. What kind of supports is the province involved in providing for this community? You know, I know it's shock and numbness right now, as everyone we've interviewed has told us, but eventually I imagine some supports will be necessary. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so again, I'm grateful for all these first responders that are showing up right now. The community center in Tumbler Ridge is offering services for people that need mental health support. So I just want to encourage anybody that listening that might be affected in the area that is open to you to go to that community center. The Vancouver Children's Hospital is sending their top mental health team to go to the community. We're sending other mental health supports, and we are opening crisis lines. Well, crisis lines that were already open are being targeted to make sure that people are getting the support they need wherever and however they need it. The Ministry of Education has been in contact with the school, and they're sending supports there for that school district to manage through what is this very tragic time. And the Premier's on the ground today, and we'll continue to figure out what other supports might be needed.
For parents in other parts of your province, and I mean, really, I'm sure parents across the country right now, you know, including myself, are all thinking about the process of their kids going to school and who are extra worried, you know, not to say that this could easily be replicated or even would be, but what is your message to parents in BC, in particular tomorrow morning, as they prepare to send their kids to school who are very nervous about it?
Yeah, I mean, as a parent of a 12-year-old girl, I have to say, my heart is really reeling for those families that suffered that loss. All school boards and districts across the province are reaching out to the families that are in their school, and we will make sure that we continue to communicate about the safety that's there in school, and we need to figure out our way through this grief and the shock of what's happened. We're having a day of mourning tomorrow in the legislature here in BC, and we'll take the time to grieve with the families and figure out how we move forward.
I'm sorry. I can only imagine that, you know, when you hear the ages of the victims from the RCMP, that's the first thing you think of.
Definitely. I think every parent feels that. You send your kids to school, you want them to be safe and cared for. And some parents got some really awful news yesterday. And a teacher, and teachers, heroes in our classrooms every day, was lost. So I think our hearts are just very, very heavy right now. We'll continue to be there with those families in the community and support each other as we move through. I have to say, the Premier asked yesterday to wrap those families in love today after this tragedy, and I'm just so grateful for all the messages of support that have come to that community from all around the world. That solidarity and sense of love and support, I think, means a lot to everybody.
I think it's genuinely coming from every corner of Canada. Before I let you go, Deputy Premier, I did want to ask, just as far as the investigation is concerned, I know it's obviously being conducted by the RCMP, but is there any light you can shed about sort of the questions you may have or your government may have, or what involvement your government may have in that instance?
Yeah, so just really grateful again for the responders that showed up so quickly on the scene. They've been really deep into the investigation and releasing details as they feel ready, and we want to give them that space to do that work. Our government is providing all the resources necessary to make sure that we can get all the investigative tools on the ground. And I know the Premier will be giving a further update as he makes his way to Tumbler Ridge tonight. And, you know, today is about mourning, and tomorrow will be about mourning and being there for the families. And there will be a lot of work as we move forward to make sure we can understand how to move forward.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you making time, Deputy Premier, for the conversation tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That's the Deputy Premier of British Columbia, Nikki Sharma. We'll take a quick commercial break. As the Deputy Premier mentioned, the Premier and Federal Minister of Public Safety are headed to the community of Tumbler Ridge. They are anticipated to take questions from reporters later tonight. After a short break, former Minister of Public Safety, Mark Carney, is here. Back in a moment.
So a suspect is identified as an 18-year-old female by the name of Jessie. We have a history of police attendance at the family residence. Some of those calls were related to mental health issues. Police have attended that residence in the past, approximately a couple of years ago, where firearms were seized under the criminal code. I can say that at a later point in time, the lawful owner of those firearms petitioned for those firearms to be returned, and they were.
Were criminal charges laid in relation to those firearms?
No.
BC RCMP there providing an update this afternoon on what we know so far about yesterday's deadly mass shooting at a secondary school in the small community of Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia. The death toll as it stands now is 9 people, and that includes an adult educator at the school, 5 students between the ages of 12 and 13, and the suspected shooter. The mother and stepbrother of the suspected shooter were also found dead in a nearby residence. We're anticipating Premier Eby and Federal Public Safety Minister Gary Anandasangri will speak with media a little bit later on this evening once they arrive in the community. With me now here in studio is Marco Mendocino, former Chief of Staff to Prime Minister Mark Carney and former Public Safety Minister under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Hi, Marco. Good to have you here.
Yeah.
Wish it were, of course, under very different circumstances. I just want to start off with your reaction. I mean, everyone was glued to this last night as it unfolded in kind of shock and horror. Your thoughts?
Well, like everyone, I've been watching the coverage today, and my heart goes out to the community. And by all reports, this is a tight-knit community. It's a community that knows hardship, but also knows how to stick together. And it's a community where everybody knows everybody else. And so you can just imagine that their world has been completely shattered. You've got families who are coming home, and there's an empty seat at a dinner table, or tomorrow there will be empty desks where students should be. The degree of trauma is unspeakable. And if there's anything that I think the country can do, it's just to really try to rally around them.
It certainly happened today. From before I get into sort of the mechanics of what a Minister of Public Safety would be doing right now, you know, politically, that happened today. I have to say, like, it was unreal to see the reaction in the House of Commons, the cancelling of question period for everyone watching, the cancelling of regular business. It'll resume tomorrow, but each of the political leaders on their way in the morning and then, you know, formally during the afternoon stood up to make their comments about exactly what you just described. What does that say to you?
The right thing to do, which is putting politics aside and seeing parliamentarians of all different tribes and at every different level of government coming together and putting aside debate and really demonstrating solidarity and trying to find the words, because truthfully, there are no words that will console the families tonight. I mean, that is the harsh truth, having grieved with families of victims in this moment. But it's not just about the words, it's also about showing up. And there are different ways in which political leaders can show up. I think allowing for some space for families just to absorb as best as they can the initial news. There's shock there right now. There is probably a lack of ability to process what is happening. And I think some time and some respect for the community as they get the support that they need from first responders, who also have a crucial job to do right now in these moments. So it's one part trying to find the words, although probably not succeeding to a certain extent, and then being there, being present, and trying to find some light in a very dark moment.
You lived through a number of tragedies in the portfolio
Yes.
of public safety. I know the minister now, Gary Anandasangri, is headed up to the community. He'll be there alongside Premier Eby a little bit later tonight. What sort of role does the federal government in instances like this play? And in particular, like, is there any intersection with the investigation or asking questions, at least of law enforcement, of what happened?
Well, there's an operational role, which is to oversee the work that the RCMP is doing in the region and in the community. And you just played a clip of a briefing that the Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP in British Columbia gave to provide some information and provide some initial shedding of light on what happened. And those are extremely difficult briefings to do. But I think just more supportively to try to be present. And hearing MP Bob Zimmer earlier on your show say that he's heard from different representatives who basically offered whatever it is they can do.
Including the public safety minister,
including
right?
the public safety, including Gary Anandasangri, who is on his way there along with the Premier, to just say on a practical level, what can we do? How can we help? Are there victim services that we can provide? Are there additional professionals that we can bring into the community at a pace and at a measure that is right for the community? And I think listening. I mean, I think that was the other thing that MP Zimmer said that I think is the right thing to do, because instinctively, I think political leaders try to articulate,
right,
they try to demonstrate leadership, but in my experience, I think even more importantly, you just have to just be present and just to listen and try to be supportive as best as you can.
And also from your experience going through stuff like this, how key is, you mentioned the Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP, he was very forthcoming with information today. It was a long, back and forth with reporters. It was an opportunity after a number of hours had passed there were so many outstanding questions to get answers on the record. From your perspective in situations like this, how important is it to get information out?
It's vital, especially where there's still a live investigation where you're pursuing a person of suspicion or a suspected shooter. In this case, that was not necessary because, according to reports, the shooter, there was a self-inflicted wound and is dead. So information sharing is important. It is a way to keep the public apprised of any ongoing threat to the community. It is a way for the community to be kept up to speed on certain things that they can do to protect themselves if there's an ongoing threat. And it's a way to ensure that the community is aware of the support that is being offered, not only from governments, but from Canadians more broadly. And again, I think once the initial shock starts to settle, which will take time, because this does not happen overnight, and it does not happen over days. It will take a long, long time. I think that's when there can start to be some processing and appreciation of the solidarity that is forming around this community, like we hope a warm blanket and a hug, because that's what a lot of these families are going to need.
I'll leave it on that. Thanks a lot, Marco. Really appreciate it. Former Federal Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino. We'll take another commercial break, but we've got more coverage of this coming up here on Power Play.
last conversation that I had forced me to retreat to the hotel to recover. It's devastation is not the correct word for what has happened to this community. There are not words strong enough in the English language to convey properly what has happened to this community.
The people are just beautiful themselves. I've gotten to know so many over the years and just can't imagine what those families are dealing with today. You know, being a dad of 4 kids myself, I just, these parents send their kids off to go to school, expecting them to walk through the door in the afternoon.
Reaction on our program to the fact that the community of Tumbler Ridge is in mourning after 8 people were murdered and at least 25 others injured. Here's what we know so far. Tumbler Ridge is a small town near the Alberta border where at about 1:20 p.m. local time yesterday afternoon, an alert was issued to the municipality and the surrounding area about reports of an active shooter. The death toll, as it stands now, is 9 people. RCMP say 7 people were killed at Tumbler Ridge Secondary School, a 39-year-old female educator, 3 female students, and 2 male students between the ages of just 12 and 13. The suspected shooter was also among those who died from what police say was a self-inflicted injury. At least 25 people were injured, and 2 people with significant injuries were taken from the scene and airlifted to the hospital, where they remain in critical but stable condition. The RCMP had previously said 1 victim died while being transported to hospital, but RCMP now say that is false. The mother and stepbrother of the suspected shooter were found dead as well in a nearby residence. That suspected shooter has been identified by police as 18-year-old Jesse Van Rootselaar, who RCMP say dropped out of school 4 years ago and was not currently attending the school. Condolences are certainly pouring in across the country, and today on Parliament Hill, MPs marked the tragedy in the House of Commons. A moment of silence was observed this afternoon before the House of Commons was suspended for the day. That was an agreement between all the parties to do so. They also, all the leaders of those political parties, stood in the House of Commons after that moment of silence and delivered statements of support. Every single one of the political parties' leaders did that. The House was adjourned. It will resume normal business tomorrow. Tonight, we are going to leave you on that moment of silence. Our thoughts are certainly with everyone in the community of Tumbler Ridge.